Hi, my name's Audalyn, and at my own baby shower, surrounded by people I thought were family, my sister stood up and said the man I loved might not be the father. She printed out a fake DNA test, just to humiliate me, but the part that really stuck? She smiled while doing it, like she was proud. What she didn't expect was that someone else had come prepared. And when her husband walked up and handed her divorce papers, in front of everyone, I didn't have to say a word. Before we dive in, what time are you listening to this? And where? Drop a comment below, because this isn't just a story about a baby shower. It's about what happens when silence stops being a shield and becomes your sharpest weapon. I pulled into my parents' driveway a little after 10 a.m., the Carolina sun already beating down harder than it should for late spring. My husband James had offered to come with me, but I'd told him not to worry. It was just brunch, the kind with lukewarm eggs, overly polite smiles, and the lingering scent of lemon furniture polish that never left this house. Inside, everything was exactly where it had always been. The foyer smelled like aging wood and clean linen. On the left wall, past the credenza, was the gallery. Family pictures stacked in chronological chaos, but with one running theme. Isolde, my sister, was in nearly all of them. Big hair, bold smile, new haircut, new boyfriend, new year. Her middle school pageant photo, where she wore a rhinestone tiara and a spray tan too dark for a 12-year-old, still had the prime real estate at the top center of the wall, like she'd won something none of us would ever understand. I said hi to Mom, who was already in the kitchen whisking eggs like we were feeding 20, not 4. Dad offered me coffee with a stiff pat on the shoulder and then settled into his usual recliner with a sports channel murmuring in the background. No one asked how I was feeling, no mention of the baby. Maybe they were trying not to overwhelm me, but silence has a way of becoming its own kind of noise. I wandered into the hallway, past the piano we were never allowed to touch as kids, and stopped in front of the Sisters Forever frame. I'd bought it when I was 9, 2 picture slots, a glittered phrase in cursive across the bottom. The idea was simple, one photo of each of us. Mine never made it in. I remember giving it to her with a ribbon tied around it, practically begging for that one sliver of acknowledgement. She laughed and slid in a photo of herself at cheer camp instead. Today, it still stood there. Just her. Always her. "Brunch'll be ready in 20, Mom called, snapping me out of the daze. I walked back into the kitchen and started slicing fruit. We moved around each other like strangers on a subway, familiar but disconnected. She talked about the neighbor's new deck, some church fundraiser, and how Dad had hurt his back trying to fix the fence. I nodded, smiled, tried. Then my phone buzzed. I almost didn't look, but something in my gut told me it wasn't just another ad or app reminder. I wiped my hand on a paper towel and picked it up. Tagged, Isolde Vexley posted a photo. The caption stopped me cold. "First to bring a grandchild? Maybe not, but at least I'll look good doing it." The image? Isolde, one hand cradling a baby bump that, unless she'd eaten a watermelon for breakfast, was padded with something that didn't belong to her biology. A soft pink maternity dress, hair curled, filters turned up to 11. The comments were already rolling in. "Congrats! Wait, you're pregnant too? Oh wow, twinsies in the fam?" I stared at the screen, numb. I hadn't even announced my pregnancy yet. We were going to tell everyone at the baby shower next weekend, quietly, intimately, just close family and friends. But here she was, making it a game, stealing the moment before I could even speak it out loud. "You okay, honey?" Mom asked, looking over her shoulder. I cleared my throat. "Yeah, just work stuff." I slipped the phone into my bag and forced myself to finish slicing the strawberries. My hands moved automatically, but my thoughts swirled with old echoes. Like the time Isolde accidentally wore white to my engagement party, or the time she announced her move back home on the same night James and I bought our house, or the time she told a roomful of our relatives, "Audalyn's job sounds made up, doesn't it?" But this was something else. A new line crossed. She was faking a pregnancy, publicly, to hijack attention, from me, from my unborn son. I excused myself to the bathroom, closed the door behind me, and sat on the edge of the tub. My stomach, already stretched from the baby, now tightened from something heavier, betrayal wrapped in pink satin. I opened the app one last time, stared at her post, then quietly deleted the app. I couldn't look at it anymore. Not today. No, back in the living room, I took a seat on the edge of the couch. My father barely noticed. My mother hummed softly while pouring orange juice into tiny glasses. Nobody asked what was wrong. Nobody asked what that look on my face meant. I pressed a hand to my belly. You're not going to grow up invisible like I did. I looked at that wall again, the one with all the photos. Maybe that's why she never added my picture. There was never room for both of us. And that wasn't just a photo frame issue. It was always the story. If Isolde walked into the room, the air shifted. She needed to be noticed, needed the story to bend toward her. And I'd learned how to step aside. But 2 years ago, for a brief moment, it had felt like maybe the story was finally mine. Derek wasn't flashy. He didn't wear tailored suits or post gym selfies. He was a systems engineer, tall, thoughtful, always smelled like cedar wood and clean laundry. We met at a professional development conference in downtown Charlotte. He'd sat 2 chairs over in a breakout session on adult learning principles. While the rest of the room tuned out, Derek had leaned toward me and whispered, "This woman sounds like she's reading the dictionary backward." I laughed harder than I should have. That was the start. By our 4th date, he remembered I preferred chamomile to peppermint. He bought tulips for no reason. He'd met some of my coworkers at a mixer and fit in effortlessly, even though socializing wasn't his thing. He listened, really listened. For the first time, I let myself imagine introducing someone to my parents not out of obligation but hope. 4 months in, we had plans for him to meet my family at a backyard barbecue. That night, we video called like we always did. Me in my pajamas, him sitting on his couch, rubbing the back of his neck the way he did when he was tired. He told me I made him feel calm. I told him I hadn't felt this safe in a long time. The next morning, I sent him a good morning text with a stupid pancake gif. It never got delivered. By noon, my call rang once and went straight to voicemail. By the next day, I realized he had blocked me. Everywhere. Phone, Facebook, LinkedIn, even Venmo. Gone. 3 days passed. I cried the first night, then stopped. My gut twisted with confusion, then clenched into something harder. I wasn't 17. I wasn't going to let someone ghost me and pretend it hadn't happened. So that evening, gray sky hanging low over Charlotte, I drove to his apartment. My fingers curled tighter around the steering wheel every mile. I didn't know what I'd say, but I had to say something. I knocked once. The door opened halfway. Derek blinked, frozen. "Odalyn?" I managed a tight smile. "Hey, I figured I'd check in since you disappeared." He stepped outside, closing the door behind him. His face looked older, more guarded. "I didn't know you'd come. I didn't know you'd vanish." I tried to keep my voice even. "You could have said something." He didn't meet my eyes. I didn't know how. "You don't know how to type? Or call?" "Derek, what happened?" There was a long silence before he exhaled. "Your sister messaged me." I felt it like a jolt. "Isolde?" He nodded. "A few days ago, she sent me some things, screenshots, said there were messages between you and other guys, photos, that you had a pattern." I didn't speak for a beat, just stared. "And you believed her?" "She said she was looking out for me, that you have a history of seeking attention, that you lie. And you never thought to ask me?" His shoulders tensed. "Why would your own sister lie about you?" I blinked hard. "Because she always has." Derek rubbed his forehead, like trying to force the doubt out. I didn't want to believe it, but she was so sure. And then I started wondering about the guy at the mixer, the one who hugged you. That was my coworker, James. His fiancée was standing next to him. I know, it just... He looked lost. I didn't know what to think. "You thought what was easier," I said quietly. "You thought leaving was cleaner than confronting me." He didn't deny it. I drove home with my hands trembling on the wheel. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling for hours, going over every conversation I'd had with Isolde that month. She had asked about Derek, how serious we were, whether he looked as good in person. She smiled a little too long when I showed her a photo of us in Asheville, like she was filing something away. By sunrise, my body was exhausted, but my mind sharp. I pulled on jeans and a sweater, didn't bother with makeup, and drove straight to my parents' house. Isolde was at the kitchen table, scrolling on her phone, her hair swept into one of those messy buns that always looked too perfect to be accidental. She didn't look up when I walked in. "I need to talk to you," I said flatly. She set her phone down, already rolling her eyes. "God, what now?" "Why did you lie to Derek?" Isolde feigned confusion. "What are you talking about?" "I went to his apartment. He told me everything." Her jaw tightened. "So? So why?" Isolde stood up, folding her arms. "You always get the ones who look like they belong in a magazine. You always get the praise, the attention. Mom and Dad treat you like you're made of glass." "I've worked for everything I have," I snapped. "You don't get to twist that into something ugly." She smirked. "I thought he was too good for you. You get too soft with men like that." "So yeah, I told him some things. Now he's gone. You're welcome." I didn't respond. I couldn't. Mom entered the room just then, dish towel in hand. She paused, sensing the tension. "Girls, please. Not again. Let's not make a scene." Not again. As if this was normal. As if lying to destroy your sister's relationship was a mild sibling spat over borrowed clothes. And there it was again, the silence. The plea for peace over justice. For image over truth. That was the moment I stopped seeing her as my sister and started seeing her as someone I'd need to survive. And survival didn't mean shouting back or keeping score. It meant paying closer attention to the quiet ways she pushed me out, ways that were hard to name but impossible to ignore. I realized it one Tuesday morning, standing barefoot in my kitchen with a mug of coffee that had already gone cold. I opened my phone, half distracted, just checking the usual morning scroll. I tapped on the family group chat, only to realize it wasn't there. I blinked, checked again. Nothing. It didn't feel like much at first. Maybe it was a glitch. Maybe someone changed the name of the group. I searched my texts. Still nothing. Then, a few minutes later, a cousin messaged me directly. "Hey, you coming to Grandma's thing Sunday? Your sister's organizing it. Should be fun." I stared at the screen. What thing? What Sunday? No one had told me a word. I texted back simply, "I hadn't heard about it." The typing bubble appeared for a second, then disappeared. By the time Sunday rolled around, I had talked myself out of asking. If they wanted me there, they would have said something. If they didn't, well, I'd survived worse. Still, I showed up, not to make a statement, but because Grandma's banana pudding always felt more like home than most people in the house ever did. I baked a peach cobbler the night before. Nothing fancy, just warm enough to say I'd made the effort. I wore a soft blue cardigan, my go-to keep-it-neutral color, and pulled my hair back to keep from fussing with it. Their house buzzed with voices when I arrived. Laughter floated through the screen door. I stepped in and was hit with a wave of pot roast and perfume. Someone had gone overboard with lilac spray. "Odalyn!" Dad called from the den. He smiled like everything was normal, like I hadn't been erased with the swipe of a finger. "Hey, Dad." I set the cobbler down on the kitchen counter. No one looked up. Isolde was already holding court, retelling a story about her trip to Charleston last month. I told the waiter, "Sir, if this lobster was any saltier, it could file for a restraining order," she said. Everyone roared. I slid into the seat furthest from her. My mom looked over, gave me a half smile, and passed the rolls. "Glad you made it, sweetheart." A family friend, Mrs. Caldwell, leaned toward me, surprised. "Oh, we thought you were still out of state." I kept my tone light. "Nope, I've lived 15 minutes away for the last 6 years." She chuckled. "Oh, I must have misunderstood. Isolde said something about you traveling all the time." I glanced across the table. Isolde didn't even flinch. She sipped her wine like she'd earned it. Dinner passed in waves. Small talk, refills, seconds. I smiled when expected. answered when spoken to, but it was like sitting inside a play I hadn't been cast in. And then, near the end, just as folks were beginning to reach for dessert, Isolde raised her glass. "I just want to say something real quick," she said, standing with that too-perfect posture she'd always carried. "To the women in this family, those who have always been brave, beautiful, and unapologetically themselves." Applause. Smiles. Nods. She looked right at me, glass still lifted. "Even the ones who take forever to find their voice." The room chuckled, light, amused, like it was just harmless teasing. My hand hovered over my fork, and I said, "I didn't lose my voice. I just got tired of yelling into silence." The room went quiet. It wasn't even loud the way I said it. I didn't raise my voice, but somehow it echoed louder than anything all night. Dad cleared his throat. Someone shifted their plate. Isolde smiled, but not the real kind, the tight, thin one, like the tension in a stretched rubber band. I pushed my chair back. "Thanks for dinner," I said to no one in particular, and walked out with my keys in hand. The sky had just turned indigo, and the chill of early spring brushed my cheeks. I sat in the car for a few minutes before starting the engine. The silence inside was thicker than anything at the table. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Mom. "Did you really have to say that?" I didn't reply. I watched the streetlight flicker on outside their house. I thought, I didn't even raise my voice. And somehow that was louder than anything she's ever done. The quieter I got, the more they seemed to fear what I might say next. And yet here I was again, agreeing to coffee with the two people who had made it their life's work to drown out my voice. I told myself it was for peace, to keep things light before the baby shower next week. But part of me wanted to see just how far Isolde was willing to go this time. We met at a small cafe on East Boulevard, the kind with painted iron chairs and mismatched mugs that made everything feel intentional. The late afternoon sun was soft, casting shadows across the stone patio. I arrived first. I always did. I ordered chamomile and chose a quiet table in the corner. 5 minutes later, my mother showed up, fussing with her scarf and waving to someone inside. Then came Isolde, sweeping onto the patio like she owned the place. That's when I saw it. A custom lavender shirt, glittered across the chest in silver cursive, "Godmother-to-be." My hand tightened around my teacup. She kissed Mom's cheek, then leaned in toward me, voice syrupy. "Thought I'd surprise you." I blinked, slowly. "Isolde, I never asked you to be the godmother." She laughed, but there was something sharp underneath it. "Oh, come on, don't be weird about it. Everyone just assumed." "No," I said more firmly. "I didn't assume, and I haven't decided yet." Her eyes narrowed, but she quickly pasted on another smile and turned to the waiter. "Hi, can I get an iced caramel macchiato? I'm celebrating. I'm going to be a godmother." He nodded politely, clearly unsure how to respond. I sat in silence as she started chatting up the couple at the next table. "First baby in the family. I'm just so excited to help raise her. She'll be so loved." I looked at Mom, who was now staring into her tea like it held an answer. "You knew she made that shirt?" I asked quietly. "She just said it was for fun," she whispered. "I didn't think she'd wear it in public." I stood up and pulled Isolde aside, away from the other tables. "You need to stop." She tilted her head as if amused. "Why are you always so tense?" "Because you keep rewriting my life like it's a script you can punch up." She crossed her arms. "You're about to be a mother. People are watching. You don't want to look cold. This family has a certain image, and I'm just helping you protect that." My jaw clenched. "This isn't about image, it's about truth and boundaries." But she wasn't listening. She never was. We returned to the table. The server had placed her drink down, but she didn't touch it. Instead, she adjusted her shirt so the godmother glitter caught the light. That's when she leaned back and said, loud enough for half the patio to hear, "So, is the baby's room in that same condo you inherited from Grandpa, or did you finally decide to sell it?" I froze. The condo had been left to me. Directly. No contest. But the whispers had started years ago. about how our parents had influenced the will. Isolde had repeated that lie enough times. I wasn't sure if even she remembered it wasn't true. Two women at a nearby table turned their heads. I looked at my mother, her lips parted, then pressed together again. Silent. "It's mine," I said calmly, clearly. "Legally, morally, all of it." Isolde gave a soft scoff. "Touchy, touchy." I stood. My voice was steady now. "And you're not the godmother." She blinked. "You don't get to name yourself anything in my child's life. Not without asking. Not after what you've done." Her smile cracked. "You don't get to claim what's not yours anymore. That includes roles, stories, or family legacy." Isolde's jaw tightened. She grabbed her untouched latte and tossed it into the trash can like it had betrayed her. "I was trying to make this easier," she muttered, then stormed off toward the parking lot, leaving a trail of silence behind her. I sat back down. My hands were trembling slightly, but I didn't hide them. My mother said nothing for a long time. Finally, she looked up. "You know how your sister gets." I took a slow sip of my tea. "No," I said. "I know how she stays, and I'm done adjusting to that." The breeze picked up. The glitter on the empty seat across from me caught the light once more. For someone so desperate to be part of my child's life, she never asked what I wanted. And now, standing in the backyard of my parents' home, surrounded by pastel balloons, folding chairs, and voices trying too hard to be cheerful, I realized Isolde never had to ask. She took. The baby shower was meant to be small, my request, not my mother's. I told her, no surprises, no RSVP lists longer than a CVS receipt, and absolutely no speeches. I didn't want a spectacle, just close friends, family, and some peace before everything changed. The weather that Saturday was kind enough. A mild spring afternoon, breezy enough to keep the air light but not chilly. The backyard looked sweet in that southern way, magnolia leaves lining the fence, 2 tables covered in baby blue and light yellow cloths. The cake sat at the center. He or she, let's see, in thick white icing, with plastic forks nestled in a mason jar nearby. I was actually smiling when I walked in, until I saw her. Isolde arrived late, of course, 15 minutes after the reveal was supposed to start. She was dressed in white denim, oversized sunglasses, and that shirt again. Godmother-to-be in gaudy silver script, glitter catching every bit of sunlight it could. Some of the guests clapped when she strolled in like a movie star entering a charity gala. She waved and hugged our mother, ignoring me entirely. Ellison appeared behind me, pressing his hand gently against my lower back. "Breathe," he whispered, his lips close to my ear. "She's just making noise." I nodded. But inside, I was already preparing for impact. The actual reveal came a few minutes later. My mom counted down from 5, and Ellison and I cut into the cake together. Blue frosting spilled out from the center, and the crowd erupted. Cheers, clapping, a few fake gasps. "A boy!" someone shouted. "Team Blue for the win!" Another laughed. And just as I let the moment begin to soften the tension in my chest, "Wait!" Isolde clapped her hands sharply. "Before we all start celebrating, can I say something real quick?" The crowd fell quiet. She pulled a folded sheet of paper from her purse like it was a golden ticket. "I brought a little gift," she said, her voice sing-songy. "Just a bit of clarity." I frowned. "Isolde, don't." She held the paper up like it was evidence in a courtroom. "According to this test, Ellison might not be the father." Gasps. Literal gasps. It was like the sound left the backyard in one giant inhale. My eyes darted to Ellison. His smile had vanished. His jaw clenched, and he turned to me. Not angry. Not yet, but wide-eyed with a kind of shocked stillness that cut deeper than anything else could have. I stepped forward. "What is that?" "A DNA analysis," she said. "I got it online. Ran a test through a service. Just wanted to keep everyone honest." "You ran a test?" I asked, my voice trembling but steady. "On what? Air? You don't have our DNA." She smirked. "Details. Honestly, Odalyn, you've always been so secretive. I figured, why not get ahead of the rumors before they start? Ellison looked down at the paper as I snatched it from her. No header, no lab name, no identification, nothing official, just numbers and boxes, downloaded from God knows where. My mother stepped in. Isolde, that's enough. But Isolde wasn't done. It's a joke. Come on, everyone here knows it's not real. I just wanted to add a little drama. It's a party after all. The crowd didn't laugh. A couple of friends shifted uncomfortably. One of them grabbed her purse and slipped quietly through the gate. Someone whispered something about crossing a line. I looked at Ellison again. His eyes met mine, not full of blame, but pain. Not because he believed her, but because for just 1 second he wondered. And that was enough. I walked toward her, heels clicking against the deck, stopping only when I was close enough for her to feel my breath. You tried to steal the one thing I've protected more than anything else, I said quietly. My peace. Isolde crossed her arms. You're overreacting. I shook my head. No, I'm seeing clearly. I held up the fake test. This is who you are, and now you've shown everyone else. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. Behind me, Ellison stepped forward. You're lucky this is her day. If it were mine, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Luther, Isolde's husband, had been standing near the drinks table. Now he looked away, embarrassed. My father, pale and visibly shaken, muttered something about needing air and disappeared inside. And my mother? She said nothing. Again. The silence was thicker than the frosting on the ruined cake. I turned back toward the table and picked up my fork. Carefully, I took another bite of the blue-filled slice and smiled. She's due in 6 weeks, I said to no one in particular. And from this point forward, my son will know exactly who stood beside him and who used his name for attention. I didn't cry. I didn't run. I stayed long enough for the rest of the guests to eat cake, open the diaper raffle gifts, and pretend that the storm hadn't just cracked down the middle of my family. That was the moment I stopped playing nice and started playing smart. The frosting hadn't dried on the cake when the tension in the backyard took on a new shape. People weren't talking much, not anymore, just low murmurs, awkward shifting in lawn chairs, some kids chasing each other around a folding table like nothing happened. And there stood Isolde, in the middle of it all, holding that ridiculous printed test with her perfectly manicured fingers, as if it hadn't just imploded her own credibility. I didn't need to look around to know the mood had shifted. I could feel it. My neighbor's eyes avoiding mine, my coworkers suddenly too interested in their lemonade. Ellison reached over, took my hand gently. He didn't speak, just gave the faintest nod, like, I'm here. My mother was the one to finally break the silence. What was that? She asked, more to herself than to anyone else. My dad, usually silent to a fault, leaned forward in his chair, face drawn. This crossed the line, he said quietly. This wasn't a joke. This was war. That word landed hard. War. And just as the echo of it began to settle, Luther moved. He had been sitting near the side fence the whole time, keeping to himself, half shielded by the hydrangeas and some leftover gift bags. But now he walked forward, slow, deliberate. In his hand was an envelope, white, sealed. He stopped in front of Isolde. Her shoulders stiffened as he approached, still clinging to the last shred of theater she thought she controlled. He looked her straight in the eye. His voice was calm, but cold enough to cut marble. You love making scenes, he said, so here's one you didn't get to direct. He handed her the envelope. She stared down at it, puzzled, then froze. What is this? She asked, her voice too high, too bright. You already know, he said, loud enough for everyone still standing nearby to hear. It's over, Isolde. Signed and dated. You've embarrassed yourself enough. Gasps again, but quieter this time, more weighted. Even the kids slowed down. You're divorcing me? She snapped, looking from the envelope to his face. Right here? Right now? Luther didn't flinch. You made this mess public. I'm just taking out the trash in the same place you dumped it." The backyard, once buzzing, went still. Even the breeze seemed to hold its breath. Luther, this is insane. Don't do this in front of them." "You already did worse," he said. "You attacked your pregnant sister with a lie. You humiliated your entire family for, what, clout?" He turned away and started walking back toward the gate. Isolde stood rooted, fingers trembling, the envelope dangling from her hand. And I? I stayed where I was. I didn't step in, didn't smirk. I didn't need to. Her undoing wasn't mine. It was hers, start to finish. Our mom stood then, walked toward Isolde slowly. Her voice, when it came, was lower than I'd ever heard it. Tired, frayed. "We begged you," she said. "We told you to stop making everything about performance, but you didn't want a family. You wanted a spotlight." Isolde's lip trembled. "I didn't mean—" "No," Mom cut in. "You never mean to hurt anyone. You just don't care if you do." Then she looked at her daughter, not with anger, not even disappointment, just distance. "You're not welcome in our home until you get help." Isolde's mouth opened, but nothing came out. No witty comeback, no feigned apology. She just stood there, alone in her glittery shirt and smeared mascara, holding divorce papers like confetti that never fell. The people who remained kept their heads down. A few whispered. A couple grabbed their purses, murmuring, "We should let them be," before heading toward their cars. No one clapped. No one hugged her. She had the stage, but this time, she was the only one who didn't get applause. 9 days passed. 9 very quiet days. After the disaster that was my baby shower, Ellison and I slipped back into the rhythm of our little apartment. I spent the days folding onesies and setting up the bassinet we'd ordered. Ellison checked the locks twice every night. Neither of us said it aloud, but the silence from Isolde was unsettling. That Friday, just as the sun dipped low and the blinds threw slashes of orange light across our kitchen floor, there was a knock. Not the light tap of a neighbor dropping off mail. Not the delivery guy with Thai food. It was heavier, too familiar. I paused mid-fold, a tiny blue hat in my hand, and looked toward the door. Ellison came around the corner, wiping his hands on a dish towel. "You expecting anyone?" I shook my head. The knock came again. I stepped forward, unlocked the deadbolt, and cracked it open. There she was. Isolde. Sunglasses on, even though it was nearly dark. Her hair looked slept on, her makeup from God knows when. She held a duffel bag in one hand and some kind of gift bag in the other. "I just need a place to stay," she said flatly. "One night." For a moment I couldn't move. I just stared. My mind went blank, then furious, then blank again. Before I could say anything, Ellison appeared beside me, his voice firm but controlled. "This isn't the place," he said. "And it's not the time." Isolde turned toward him like she hadn't noticed him standing there. Her lips curved into something between a smirk and a sneer. "You're not the man I thought you were," she said lightly. "Or maybe, you're exactly that." Then she looked straight at me. "You always get what you want, Odeli, even when you don't deserve it." My hand instinctively found my belly. I didn't blink, didn't flinch. I just stared at her like she was a stranger, which, in many ways, she was now. She sighed, dramatically, of course, then held out the gift bag. "It's for the baby," she said. I didn't reach for it. She lowered her hand, crouched slowly, and set the bag on the welcome mat. As she stood, she leaned in slightly, voice barely above a whisper. "Just remember," she said, "people online love stories about happy families, and broken ones too." Then she turned and walked away, her boots scraping the concrete in sharp, defiant strides. I stood still, frozen, until the sound of the lobby door clicking shut reached us. Ellison was the one to speak first. "She threatened you. With that." I didn't answer. I reached down, picked up the bag like it might explode, and walked it straight to the trash can under the sink. I'm installing cameras tomorrow, I said, front and back. Ellison nodded once, his jaw tight. I'll help. I didn't sleep well that night. Every creak in the hallway sounded like a second knock. Every flicker of the hallway lights outside made me check the peephole. The next morning, I didn't wait. I called our lawyer. I need to start paperwork for a restraining order, I said, and I don't want to wait until something worse happens. She didn't even sound surprised. We'll take care of it. Later that day, as I looked through my window while feeding our dog, I spotted a neighbor, Mrs. Delaney from 2 doors down, sitting on the bench near the complex mailbox. She waved. I waved back. And for a split second I thought, this is the life I fought for. Quiet, secure, honest. Isolde would never understand that. I didn't lock her out of my life out of anger. I did it out of instinct. 3 weeks passed. It was enough time for the baby's name to be embroidered onto soft towels, for thank you cards from the baby shower to be written, though some were left unsent, and for the doorbell to not ring. Not once. Ellison and I took long walks again, quiet, simple ones like we used to before everything got so loud. Our little apartment felt warm, peaceful, but still, I couldn't ignore the feeling that something unfinished was circling us, like static in the air before a summer storm. Then came the christening. It was held at a modest community center, 1 town over. Nothing extravagant, just what we wanted. Calm, intimate, full of love, and only those who respected our space. The front tables were dressed with simple florals, and the speaker system echoed soft acoustic hymns while guests trickled in. My parents arrived early and helped set up. My mother had a new stillness about her, less performative, more grounded. My father didn't say much, but he stood close. That was enough. Ellison hovered by the entrance, greeting guests, keeping his eyes open for what we both knew might come. And, right on cue, 15 minutes before the ceremony started, she walked in. Isolde, pale blue dress, loose curls swept over one shoulder, a new kind of smile, polished, vague, weaponized. I thought we were starting over, she said loudly, as if that was all it took to erase the damage. A few heads turned, a couple of guests even smiled back at her, confused but courteous. I didn't approach her. I didn't need to. She floated around the room like she owned the space, leaning into hugs with people who didn't know better, who hadn't watched the theater unfold across months. Years, really. Some asked where Luther was. She told them, he's traveling. It's complicated. It wasn't. We all knew. After the baptism, Ellison stood beside the podium and tapped the mic. It was time for toasts. He opened with a few words, gentle, heartfelt, just as we'd planned. My hands rested on our son's blanket-covered car seat, my heart steady. Then, uninvited, Isolde stepped forward with a note card in hand. "Do you mind?" she said sweetly, already adjusting the mic. No one stopped her. She began, "Family," she said, "isn't always perfect, but it is resilient, and forgiveness is a gift we give ourselves." I didn't even flinch, because what came next wasn't her speech. It was her voice, just not from that podium. The speakers buzzed slightly, then a recording began to play. Just remember, people online love stories about happy families and unbroken ones too. Gasps. A murmur rolled through the room like a wave. Isolde froze. Her note card slipped from her fingers. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. Ellison's lapel mic, still hot, was connected to the sound system. Earlier, before the guests arrived, he had played the audio file one more time, testing clarity. The tech guy left the feed open, and now, so had she. I didn't move. I didn't gloat. I simply walked over to the gift table. From my purse, I pulled out a small, wrapped box. I unwrapped it carefully, deliberately, and placed the contents between two flower arrangements, the sisters' forever photo frame, still with Isolde's childhood photo on one side, but now, on the other side, sat a tiny new picture, baby Alex, wrapped in a yellow blanket, smiling in a way only newborns can, soft, trusting, unburdened. I turned to face the room, not raising my voice, just letting it land. I found someone who deserves the space she never made for me. That was it. No monologue, no vengeance speech. Just the truth. Guests whispered. Some looked down. Others glanced toward Isolde, who by now was trembling, cheeks flushed not with shame, but disbelief. It was the look of someone realizing the narrative had slipped from their hands. She took a step toward the podium, opened her mouth again, but this time no one waited to hear. People were already drifting. The photographer unplugged his gear and began packing early. My parents stood silently beside each other. My mother didn't move toward Isolde. She just watched her. When Isolde finally turned and stormed out, heels clicking hard against tile, no one followed. No doors were held open. No eyes met hers. And no one clapped. She left the way she came into my story, loud, unwanted, and convinced the silence would miss her. But silence can be a sanctuary, too. 3 mornings had passed since the christening, and I still hadn't taken the frame down from the shelf. It sat on the entry table where the light hit just right, casting a soft glow across the glass surface each morning. Baby Alex's face stared out with wide eyes, unaware of the storm that had quieted just beneath him. I was alone with him in the living room that Saturday. The world outside hadn't fully woken up. The birds had, though, and their song floated through the cracked window above the armchair where I rocked him. The air smelled faintly of formula, and the lavender sachets my mom insisted would help calm a new mother's nerves. On the table next to me sat the frame. But this time, it wasn't bare or broken. It had been placed inside a custom shadow box, glass-sealed, corners locked. One side still bore the old photo of Isolde in her pageant crown, the one she never let anyone forget. The other now held Alex, swaddled in a light blue blanket, arms tucked close to his chest, lips parted as if caught mid-dream. That frame used to haunt me. Now it didn't speak. It didn't accuse. It just existed, a symbol of what was, and what I'd chosen to make of it. I was halfway through humming "You Are My Sunshine" when my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I paused the rocker with my foot, tiptoed over with Alex still against my shoulder, and peeked at the screen. "Mom." I hesitated for just a second before answering. "Morning," I said softly. She didn't say anything right away. Then, just above a whisper, came her voice. "Your father and I watched the christening video again last night. Ellison sent it." I nodded, unsure if she could hear it. She continued, "We're proud of you, of how you handled it, of the mother you're becoming." Then, after a breath, "And we're sorry that it took us this long to say it out loud." There was silence, no scrambling to justify the past, no sudden tears, just words I'd stopped waiting to hear long ago. "Thank you," I said, not bitter, not expectant, just steady. She asked if she could drop off some things later that week. I told her I'd think about it. Then we said goodbye. By the time I hung up, Ellison had stepped out from the bedroom, coffee mugs in hand. He raised one toward me like a peace offering, then kissed Alex on the head before setting both cups down on the table beside the frame. He looked at it, then at me. "You okay?" I exhaled slowly, brushing a thumb over Alex's downy hair. "I think I finally understand what peace feels like. It's not perfect, but it's mine." He nodded. "You earned it." That night, after we put Alex down and the house dipped into its evening hush, I took the frame in both hands and carried it to the living room shelf. Not to hide it, but to elevate it. I placed it high, between a framed poem I loved and the candle we lit every New Year. It wasn't out of reach, but it was out of reach of harm. Some people will never love you the way you need. Some sisters stay frozen in the roles they wrote for you. But motherhood taught me something. The story doesn't end because someone exits. It begins when you decide who's worth staying. I turned off the light, leaving the frame bathed in soft moonlight from the window. It was finally still. If there's no room for you in their story, maybe it's time to start writing your own.